Hello, and we are back on Boomer Live once again. As you all know, we are building up to that mega contest between India and Australia in that all-awaited semi-final of the Women's T20 World Cup. It is a mouth-watering contest which is definitely awaiting us. But before that, we're going to preview it and understand which team has got that upper hand to go into the final. Now, when we talk about India, India have been extremely consistent in T20 World Cups. They made the semi-final in 2019, made the final in 2020, played against the same opposition and lost out. And Australia have been the defending champions forever now. So not quite sure when have they really put down their crown. So these are two heavyweights now coming up against each other. Recent records, played a Commonwealth Games final, played the T20 World Cup final, and of course, who wouldn't forget the 2017 semi-final when these two took on. Now, the update is that Australia won the toss and chose to bat. So we are going to be talking about the teams. And for India, of course, Harmanpreet Kaur is fit to play. So it's a tad bit of positive news for that. But Harmanpreet Kaur's form is going to be a concern. I have Jen with me. Jen, what do you reckon? Can India finally change its fortune against Australia in big knockouts?
I mean, it's going to be a very difficult one to win here because Australia are flying high in this format. I think they've only lost one match since 2022, and that was against India though. But it has not been easy for any team to face Australia in any match, let alone be a knockout, a World Cup semi. So you would say going into the match that Australia has the upper hand, and now that McLaren has, I mean, obviously won the toss, but you would have to say this Australian team is just too difficult to get away with when they've got. I think they've got some really good batting power. They've also got a lot of all rounders in this team. So that's I think the biggest strength of this Australian team: the fact that there are so many players who can contribute with the bat and the ball,
Yeah,
and that's where it gets so difficult to go after this team because you've got. I think you've got four all rounders, five all rounders, if I'm not wrong, and when you have what a middle order full of all rounders, it's just impossible really to,
yeah,
make or really to dominate this team. But having said that, this Indian team will feel a little confident because they
yeah.
did go toe to toe against them. I know it wasn't the same format, but
Well,
you would have.
the series which India played against Australia at home was very close. I know the scoreline might suggest you something else, but the kind of contest what we got to see in India, I understand it's your home conditions, whatever, but
Yeah.
the contest what you got to see against India was Australia at home was really good. One of the games India did go on to win as well. So that's maybe a tab of confidence. And on top of the now Australia batting. Now, it's going to be important. It's going to be down to Renuka once again, isn't it? To break the back of Australian top order because Elisa Healy is in top notch form once again. I mean, she's always been in form. There's no doubt about it. And she is going to be India's Achilles heel once again when it comes to tackling her. If she's going to get going, she's going to totally take the game away from me because that's the kind of impact she has created in women's cricket on the entire ecosystem wherever she has played.
Yeah, absolutely. But you have to really. I mean, when India played England as well, I think it was Renuka Singh who really broke the back of England, and it did seem like for a long time that England were under pressure. England were not going to go and post a good target. But then, towards the later half, rather the death overs, that's where you really let things go. And England went on to score a very decent target, you would say, and then Indian batters never got going. Again, that's been an issue. We already touched upon how Harmanpreet Kaur's form has been a
Yeah,
problem for India. India really need to go look. I mean, bounce back. You would say, or India really needs to look beyond the likes of Richa Ghosh and
Smriti
Smriti
Mandana.
Mandana because these have been the
Yeah,
two players who have contributed with the bat. But aside
yeah,
from that, India has tend to struggle a little bit with the bat. So I wouldn't say that India has not played well. India has played extremely well, and except for the England women, no one has been able to beat India. It's been comprehensive victories throughout, but that's the issue, right? You have to realize that England and Australia are the two teams which are probably are the teams which are very difficult to beat in these tournaments,
yeah,
and they are the teams who've got in terms of development as well, in terms of development in cricket, in women's cricket. These are the two teams which have gone beyond the others, and India is catching up, and we've seen that in the past. But now this is the time that India needs to convert that process that they've come through of going toe to toe to now really starting to become one of the names, one of the contenders. And beating Australia today is going to go a long way in that sense.
Absolutely. I think that, as we were talking about it earlier as well, how maybe a T20 World Cup win prior to the Women's Premier League could set it up beautifully for that Women's Premier League to also take off and women's cricket ecosystem in India to fly high. And we all hope that that's the scenario. But then when we talk about India versus Australia, takes me back to 2007 as well, the semi-final where nobody gave India a lot of chance in that men's semi-final as well, where India took on mighty Australians who were defending champions and world champions. No, not defending champions, but world champions in 50 over format. It was a new format. But now when we talk about this Australian team, it is going to be so important to tackle some of the main players. Now, Megan Scott, how good she has been throughout this tournament. She has always been good. I mean, when you take players in the Australian team, we can understand every player has created an impact in some stage or the other. Now, today, Jess Johansson has come back into the team. Alisa Healy is fit to go, and Beth Mooney up top. It is going to be a Herculean task for the Indian bowlers, especially because Indian bowlers this tournament, though you might say their batting has been decent, the Indian bowlers haven't been really convincing. Maybe barring Renuka Thakur, because other bowlers haven't really stepped up. Understanding the condition, Shika Pandey has been hot and cold. Because the English game, the game which India played against England, India had England for 27 for 3, but India still let them off the hook to score 155. Similarly against Pakistan, who have not been the best of teams in the tournament, scored 150 or against India, and it took a spectacular innings on Jamima and Richard to really take India over the line there as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's not been you would say it's been a decent tournament for India. India have really not sent the tournament on fire. There hasn't been a point in time where we felt there's something extraordinary here. But then that's all right as long as you get the win, and that's what's important. I wouldn't say that India's had ugly wins, so as to speak, but what I would say is it's not been fully a dominant performance yet in this tournament, but this is the match. This is always a match, especially in women's format. And in fact, in ICC tournaments in general, you've seen this trend when a team beats Australia, their chance of winning the tournament becomes huge. But I have to really, for me, what's really important is two aspects for Indian team is going to be important. Is one is to make sure that you don't let things go in the death overs. We've seen that
Yeah,
happen for India in two games. And
yeah,
then the other thing is to make sure that India does not get bogged down in the middle overs, because India's batting in the middle overs against spinners has been a little suspicious, I would say, or a little. It's become a little stagnant. And India's team again against England, that's what happened to you. You got off to a decent start, but then even Smriti Mandana couldn't get going against the English spinners. So the
yeah,
Australians also have a very good spin bowling lineup. I know in women's cricket it's not that easy to go after spinners because they're a lot more loopier. They'll
yeah, yeah,
really reduce the pace,
yeah,
but you have to do it because that's how you win tournaments. You cannot say these things as you cannot keep these things as excuses, because
yeah,
it's not easy, yes, but that's the
mm,
reason why becoming a world champion is not every day. And
yeah,
we have to see how India goes against the likes of Australian spinners. But also,
yeah,
one more thing, I think today's match especially is to make sure that the Australian bat opening pair don't get going, because that's been a problem against Australia for a long time. Australian
mm,
opening pair, or rather Australian top three, has really batted you out of the game. So I think that's where you have to now see how India progresses against the likes of the two openers.
I mean, as you mentioned about Australian spinners as well, Jess Johansson, I did mention that she's back in the team, and it's always
Yeah.
tough to get after her. She's been a very good bowler, especially even bowling in death overs at times. She doesn't really give away anything against her. That's going to be so important, and we've already got a comment which says the only way to stop Australia is by picking up wickets and bowling the team out, and it's right? Because you cannot stop the Australian team if you have to contain them, maybe putting them in a run rate below 5, or maybe putting them in a run rate at 6, because this team is going to take away the game very quickly. And when we talk about women's cricket, 155 in a World Cup semi-final is a very good score. And it's going to be extremely tough for a team chasing like India against a bowling lineup like Australia to chase 155 or anything in excess of 150. So you will have to be extremely good in terms of power play bowling, pick up wickets. Maybe Renuka Thakur, again upon her. I know it's too much of an ask for a young bowler. in her probably first ever T20 World Cup to go out there and break a back of a top quality batting order. But then this is what is going to be a turning point as well. And alongside Renuka, it is down to other bowlers as well to today step up, because Shika Pandey, she's back in the team, she's back in the setup, and it's going to be once again up to her to bring her experience into the fold, because she bowled beautifully in that 2017 semi-final. So once again, it's up to her, isn't it, to help and give company to Renuka and to stop this Australian team in the power play itself by picking maybe a couple or three wickets, and then hope the spinners come and do a job for India.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You did mention about Renuka Singh. She's just been incredible. I mean, she's got an average of 10, an economy of 5 in this tournament so far. So that is a great deal for them. I think one big miss for India is going to be Vastrakar, who's going to miss out
Yeah,
today. I
yeah,
think she was a very handy player because she is a good player. Lower down the order, she can, and she balls as well. I know she's not been that impressive in terms of a wicket column, her economy, but you never know with a player like that because if you look at Australia's lineup right now, they bat easily till number 10 because even Megan Shutt or Jess Johansson can do damage with the bat. And then you have to obviously look at the middle order. The middle order is the strongest too. They've got Ashley Gardner, Ellis Perry, Talia McGrath, Grace Harris. These are the strong. This is probably the most strongest middle order out there because they can ball
yeah.
as well. Not to forget. So that's where India will have to ball out of their skins. Another player that I really was impressed with has to be. I mean, Shikha Pandey is probably the second best. Bowler who's balled. As you mentioned, she's still balled well in terms of economy, but I think the issue there has been wicket taking, Evil,
Yeah.
because other than Renuka Singh, who's got an average of 10, Shikha Pandey, Radhika Yadav, they've struggled, right? And
Yeah,
Radha Yadav,
that's what
sorry.
I'm bringing to as well,
Yeah,
right? Once again, as to how
correct.
India been
They have
how
struggled,
India been
Evil.
consistent to pick up wickets in the power play, but that's not converting into middle overs bowling, because even
Correct.
against Pakistan you saw that India picked up wickets up front against England, but it hasn't been able to be converted into the middle overs bowling where Indian spinners used to come in
Yeah, I
and pick
think
up
for me,
wickets
even
and
the
take the
reason
back.
has been also the likes of someone like Deepti Sharma, who's struggled. Deepti Sharma she's done a decent job, I would say, but her economy has been horrific. 7.84. You cannot be giving away so many runs when you're trying to make defend or rather make sure a team doesn't go beyond the likes of 150. So her economy has been 7.84. So even though her average has been 20, because her economy has been 7.84, and she's been combining with Radha Yadav, whose average has been 28 and economy of 6, which is again not that great when it comes to women's cricket. So these are the two players you need them to step up because they have done in the past. They've combined together and choked teams in the past. But today, if Australia has to be brought down, this juggernaut of an Australian batting has to be brought down. They have to combine together and make sure that in the middle overs, India does keep the chokehold on.
I mean, yeah, you are absolutely right. Even Teju is right there, because especially against top quality teams in women's cricket, now with the levels being even more closer than previously what we used to see in previous years, I think it's going to be so important for India to maintain that consistent pressure. And what I mean by consistent pressure is not just bowling dot balls by picking up wickets, because they are going to go after the Australian team in big games. They've got one way to get out of the hole, that is by playing fearless brand of cricket. Now, let's talk about Indian batting, right? I mean, that's very important in games like this. Shafali Verma has been a bit disappointing, you can say so, because she's never really stepped up in big occasions for Team India. She's been there and thereabouts, but not really the most convincing and the most consistent performer. And that's why you really hope the fearless attitude really helps India to kick off and give India a good start, whatever the total India might be chasing tonight.
Yeah, I mean, Shafali Verma is a key player for India because you need her to step up. She can take the game away from the opposition very quickly, and especially in the first few overs where India would like to counter that Australian bowling lineup, put some pressure on Australia early on. It's now that India is going to be chasing. Given the fact that in a chase you want to kill off the game as soon as possible, if India gets on to a very good start, it has to be Shafali Verma. Obviously, I mean, I would have to also give to the fact that her workload hasn't been easy. She did go out and play under 19 World Cup. I know in terms of quality, you would say that obviously Shafali Verma has faced a lot more quality bowling than what she faced in the under 19 team. I
Yeah.
mean, and in the under 19 World Cup, but she was leading. She was the leader of the team. It was a Herculean task still to go out there and win the World Cup. So maybe that's also something that's been catching up to her. The kind of the quality of bowling that she faced and the increment that she faced into the top level women's team, and that's the reason why I felt her inclusion in that women's World Cup was not the best of ideas from BCCI. I know you wanted to win it, you
Yeah,
wanted to put a
absolutely.
statement
I'm,
out
I'm
there.
totally, I'm totally agreeing to you as well on this because
Yeah, but
I
now what
second
you've
that.
done, yeah, because now Abel, what you've done is you've pushed her a little back in terms of her development, in terms of what she faced, in terms of her preparation for this tournament. Because what you face in under 19 World Cup is not what you will face against the likes of Darcy Brown, Megan Shutt, Jess Jonathan, Georgia Wareham, and not to forget Elise Perry, Ashley
Yeah,
Gardner.
yeah,
Their
yeah,
whole team can ball. So it's going to be. It's been that issue. I would say that you've pushed her back in that sense. But yeah, she hasn't been that. She has been not incredibly bad. Or in terms of the other batters, you would still say she's done a decent job. 105 strike rate, 23.25 average. Fair enough, but obviously she needs to step up.
yeah. I mean, this is where you really feel like her maturity really comes into the fore. And also, one thing which I'll also admit is that for Harmanpreet Kaur, because we have a question over here, is captaincy really overburdening her? We've always had issues with her form for the longest period of time. Even in the last World Cup, the 50 over World Cup which India played, you had issues with her form. But now, is captaincy really playing that burdensome role on her? Because it feels like it's kind of bowing her down to a lot of extent. It's kind of restricting her from being herself. We've seen some good knocks whenever she is captain, but now in a World Cup like situation, there's a lot of spotlight on the Indian women's team, unlike before. And also adding to that, Harmanpreet Kaur really needs to break the shackles. I know, she is one of your marquee players. She's a clutch game player. Tonight, it is not just going to be upon her, isn't it? Because 175, whatever she scored in 2017 was one off. Even if she has to score, she needs at least three to four players really taking the game. Jemima, right? Jemima played a beautiful knock in the first game, but after that, she really hasn't stepped up. Richa Ghosh. You really need every one of these players to contribute in some way or the other for India to cross the line.
Yeah, I think one more player able right there is Deepti Sharma. We will obvious. I think she's been a little bit of a disappointment, really, with the ball, with the bat. She is India's one of India's key players. Obviously, I think she bats a little lower down the order, so fair enough. It's not always easy for her to be the player who has her best of averages, but we still have to see how she goes about it because I think she's only played two innings so far, but so far she has not really lit the tournament on fire in terms of that, in terms of with a bat. But just talking about Harmanpreet Kaur, I believe she's a lot better when it comes to T20, one day cricket rather, than T20 cricket. I think her batting suits one day cricket a lot more. But I really hope today is a day, as Teju says, because Harmanpreet Kaur has been a big match player. She's someone who absorbs pressure a lot. So even for me, I really don't know if captaincy is an issue for her because she's been in this has been in this trade for so long, being the captain and the best batter for Indian team. I know now, although now at least in this tournament and in the past few months, Smriti Mandana has taken over the best batters in terms of the numbers that she's put up. But
Yeah, yeah,
what I really expect Harmanpreet Kaur to do is, to step up today because Australia is her favorite opposition. You know what she can do, especially in that
yeah,
semi-final in the same year you spoke about 2017. Then Indian team really came together. Harmanpreet Kaur had fired India through to the finals on the back of an innings that broke Australia really. Today, India will be hoping they do the same, but Australia has become a lot stronger in terms of their what do you say all round development since that year. It's difficult to say because 2017 Australia was dominating, but so is in 2023. So for Harmanpreet, I think we expect her to perform well, but she hasn't been that amazing in T20 because her average in T20 internationals hasn't been the best. She's averaged
right.
27. Her strike rate has been 104.
Yeah,
You expect her to do a lot better. Even in WPL, I mean WBBL, she's done a lot better. So it's not like she hasn't got it in her. She's
yeah,
never done that in the T20 stage. So maybe it's
I mean,
time
it's a
for her
very
to
good
turn
point
things
because
around.
we often tend to look into her stats in the 50 over format, and it's an
Yeah.
impeccable stat, whatever she's been able to achieve over the period of time. But when we talk about T20 format, we try to compare her with our 50 over stats, which I think is slightly unfair. But at the same time, that's the kind of reputation which she carries as well. A
Yeah.
pack player who want to come in and change the game from the word go. But I personally think, there are players like this, isn't it? When they do excel in a longer version of the game, and you feel like they can carry on in a similar sense, and they'll be even only better in the shorter format. And it doesn't really happen more often, isn't it?
Yeah, I think on the men's side of things, maybe you can talk about Rishabh Pant, who's probably the had the same just position where he's been great in the IPL, he's been great in the one day, he's been great in the test, but for some reason, when you add I to the end of T20, he struggles, and I think that's what's been happening with Harmanpreet Kaur as well. I really don't know what's the reason for it. I feel sometimes in T20, she's got the issues with her tempo at what tempo to go, or whether she should go after the bowling, or whether she should stick around and then go for a bigger, longer innings. And that's where I feel sometimes Harmanpreet Kaur gets stuck on two sides. And but also, I mean, we all know that it's not a technical issue with Harmanpreet Kaur that is stopping her in T20 cricket, because she's got incredible power when it comes to whacking those long sixes. In fact, when you talk about women's cricket and how six hitting has become a core skill in women's cricket in the past 5 6 years, you will always talk about in amount of in the names of people who have converted that women's cricket into a four scoring cricket to a six hitting side of things. You will talk about the likes of Harmanpreet Kaur in the list of so many names. So she hasn't got an issue when it comes to T20 cricket in terms of her playing style as much as her mentality when it comes to which tempo to go after. I still feel she's not gotten that one tempo that she that any player has. When you talk about a player, that you are expecting them to go by default in a particular fashion. That's where I feel Harmanpreet Kaur has had too cold or too hot an innings in terms of a strike rate or in terms of
Yeah.
going after the bowling. So that's one thing she needs to work out. But aside from that, it's always a matter of time. Once she figures that out, I think there's no stopping her. And if she can
Absolutely.
combine with the likes of Smriti Mandana, you know
I
what
mean, you never
damage
know.
she
It
can
could
do.
possibly be tonight as well, isn't it? Because
Yeah,
uh, the occasion is well set for her. Even if India lose a couple of wickets up front, you really feel like a player like Harmanpreet Kaur can really come in and change the game on its head, because you kind of believe that she's got that capability because she's done it previously. She's done it wherever she's gone. And that is one thing which India can hold on to, even if India are going to lose Shafali and Smriti. So you have to expect the worst, because Smriti is going to not deliver you on every day. Smriti will fail on one of these occasions, and it could possibly be today. And that is where you need your Shafalis, your Harmanpreets, your Richards, your Jemimas to step up and take India home. And today, India has got a longer batting order as well. You got Sneh Rana back in the team. That's
yeah.
primarily because Pooja Vastraka is out, and Deepti Sharma as well. It is about time Deepti Sharma really delivers under pressure, because we've seen her really not do well in some of the big games under pressure. She's a player with immense potential. She's a beautiful all-rounder. When you talk about some of the best all-rounders in women's game, you have to say Deepti Sharma is up there. But when it comes to her delivering in some of the biggest occasions, that's where you feel that is the difference between an Australian all-rounder like an Ash Gardner or a Deepti Sharma. Maybe it could be tonight.
Yeah, I think that's also got to do with the fact that Australia know how it is to win. I mean, this Indian team is great. They've come through a generational change, but again, on side of things, you have to say that the Indian team hasn't won yet, and that's where I was having a conversation with a friend. And if you clearly look at this women's cricket era that we are in right now, we are in and this is not to draw any more parallels, and not even to say that it's the same situation, because this women's cricket is unique to itself, but I think we are at that stage, where in terms of development is what I'm saying. We're at a stage where you guys, where you remember how Australia used to be dominant once upon a time, because Australian men had become professional a lot faster than most other countries. Because you guys remember, if you guys know about cricket as such, the colored clothing and the contract system was brought on by an Australian broadcaster. and that kind of helped the Australian domestic side, or not just domestic side. It forced the Australian cricket board to become professional early on,
Yeah,
and that's why you saw the Australian men dominated so much in that 90s and the 2000s. Compared to that, the Indian team was just rising up in terms of the development. Foreign coaches were coming in, and India was modernizing their cricket. That took some
yeah,
time, and now we are in this time in men's cricket we are experiencing the fruits of the hard work. Same, I think, can be said about Indian team as well. Indian women's team. Indian women's team has become professional now with the IPL. Women's IPL is coming as well.
mm,
Australian women's team became professional, if I'm not wrong, in 2010, in the
yeah,
2010s. So, and that also is the reason why England women were the first ever women's team to be professional. So, these
yeah.
are the two teams that became professional in the last decade. Indian team has become professional in this decade. So that's the reason why able you see that disparity between the
I
two
also
teams.
think it's about them not countering enough pressure situations because we often talk
Yeah,
about
exactly.
women's game and Indian women's team at least trying to be countering pressure situations more often so that they can counter these kind of occasions when it comes to the big games like the World Cup knockouts. Indian team has been extremely consistent. That's one thing you have to give it to them. They've made it to World
Yeah.
Cup semi-finals every now and then. I mean, when we talk since 2017, they made almost every World Cup semi-final on a consistent basis. It doesn't matter they've not won it or not. Even the Commonwealth Games, they really came extremely close to winning it, and they really couldn't cross the line at the last moment. But that is where you feel the women's Premier League could possibly change the entire scenario or the outlook of women's game or how women play the game, and maybe rubbing shoulders with an Elise Perry or maybe rubbing shoulders with Elisa Healy will definitely help someone like a Deepti Sharma, talk maybe Renuka Thakur, and a lot of these players to really perform in these big occasions. And same similarly for Shefali Verma as well, because Shefali has been now under a lot of clamor, under a lot of criticism, unfairly so. She still is young. You have to remember, she still is a 19-year-old. I mean, I know she has got a lot of experience when it comes to playing international cricket. She's been playing it for the last 3 to 4 years. But let's all be honest, she came into the setup when she was 15, and she's at the age of 19. She's still trying to strive her best. What were you doing when
Then
you were
you
19?
have to say
That's my
that,
question.
yeah, I mean, you have to also say the fact that, the only probably the one silverware that India has won so far has come from likes of Shafali Verma. I mean, I know she's played international cricket, but on the other side of things, on the flip side of things, maybe to be a devil's advocate against what I already said, you have to give credit to her development. At the age that she is, she's already playing international cricket. She was
Yeah.
way beyond her years in an under 19 tournament as well. So that's where you feel you have to give her credit in that sense. But now, able is this is probably the only tournament that you'll see this Indian team. I still feel there is also a little bit of what do you say, because there's no IPL as such yet to really put that pressure on them to retain their space, because the fans out there, or rather even the selectors out there, we don't know how much the ground level is for India. At least I'm not that aware for Indian women. But now when the IPL comes, you will see 3 to 4 names for every position, especially for the openers position. You all know how much Indians love to open, and I think that's where the top order will start getting challenged a lot more. And you'll have to see how much. Obviously, now from what I'm seeing right now, right, the likes of new players that are coming up, a lot of them are not batters as much as they're ballers. That we're
Yeah.
producing a lot more ballers in women's team. But I think once that's the thing with batting, right? When it comes to bowling, except for maybe spin as such, a lot of bowling comes into your natural ability as a player early on, as a young player, especially when it comes to fast bowling. As a fast bowler, especially as a fast bowler, you develop very quickly, and your attributes as a young player really comes into picture. And you develop as a bowler. What you will be in your 20s is really determined by what you will be in your under 6 or under 12, under 14s, and then from there on you develop as a bowler. As a batter, it takes you a little bit more time to develop because batting is very technical, especially in the women's game. People
Yeah.
tend to underestimate how technical these women players are. Men's men batting is a little bit more easier in terms of technical aspect, because
Mm,
there are batters who are technically flawed, who are able to power through a career using their power or the quicker hands. But when it comes to women's cricket, because that power game is still developing in women's
Yeah,
cricket. Technical side of things is so important. So it is very, very, very difficult as a young batter because you have to develop your technique against the likes of some of the most experienced and some of the best bowlers out in the world. So
yeah,
you have to give credit to Shafali Verma because it's not easy at her age to counter some of the bowling because women's
yeah,
cricket is
absolutely.
very technical, and that transition from technicality to power game is still happening.
I mean, that's where let's talk about another player who's really been extremely impressive, in my opinion, has been Richard Ghosh, isn't it?
Yeah.
The way in which she's been able to do that finisher's job at that age and so consistently. I mean, she's got a very good future ahead of it, isn't it? Because the maturity, whatever she's showing, and the power game she possesses is something which a modern day batter in women's cricket really needs. And how much of an impact she's going to make today? Because for if India has to be chasing anything close to 140, 150, then once again, Richard Ghosh is going to be key, especially when it comes to finishing the things off. She trying to actually show her range off because her range against pace ballers is very good because she's got a very good power game. She can actually take on any bowler in the world to any part of the ground as well. So it is going to be once again up to her and how big an impact she's going to be tonight.
She's a very important player for India because for some what do you say, you have to give credit to her. She is able to she has a mental fortitude to really soak up the pressure. Even when she was batting with the likes of Smriti Mandana or some of the senior players, you saw her really take the charge and her decide go after the boundary balls and her decide to go aggressive and attack. Having said that, I think the match has already begun, and first delivery itself, Aliza Healy did go after Renuka Singh, but a very good comeback from Renuka Singh to finish at 6 runs after being hit for the first ball for a boundary. But what I really like about Richa Ghosh is she's a rare breed of cricketer when it comes to India as such, because India traditionally loves top order batting, and even that's how India's batting has been, right? Throughout the years, India's been able to produce top order bats, even maybe a good middle order bat, but lower order or a finisher has been very rare in Indian system, whether it be women's, whether it be men's. So that's why you have to really look at the likes of someone like Richa Ghosh. See, look at her development at a young age. She's already such a powerful lady, and she's able to smack them. And the way she bats, it's not as I said, right? Women's game has not got a lot of technicality, but the way she bats, she's got a really good power game. On her back foot, she's able to create a good power base. I mean, for power batting, you need to have a good base where you derive your power from your legs, and then you have your bottom hand go through. She's able to get that. She's able to set herself up for those big hits, and she's very brave enough. She's
Yeah.
brave enough to go after the bowling. As I said, even
Mhm.
when some of the senior pros are batting with her, it's her who takes a charge against the opposition bowlers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, that is one factor which is going to hold the key for India as well, especially when you're coming up against some quality ballers up there in the death overs for Australia. I think we can end the live right here and we will come back after the game and we will be talking about the Manchester United game as well because as someone has already mentioned in the comments, it's going to be a special night for Indian women's and Manchester United. I hope the latter is not the case, but the former is definitely the case. So we will be back very soon and we will talk about more of these games and we'll be back tomorrow as well to be talking about the second semi-final. Thank you all for joining. It was a pleasure taking all your questions and all your thoughts, and that's about it. And do not forget to play the fantasy contest of Barcelona versus Manchester United on the Boomer 11 app. It's now free to play. Make your team right now, as you all know, Pedri and Gavi are out, so be more mindful in terms of choosing it. Sabitzer is back, Licha Martinez is back, and it's going to be an interesting one definitely tonight for us. Bye bye. Take care, all of you. Bye bye.